toughest task to stand between you and Saturday evening parties with beer and biryanis and waiting for France to beat England. I don't know, probably tomorrow when I reach Argentina, we'll be playing. So thank you, BWS, for inviting me the second time. And it's just wonderful to see. It's 5:30. Believe you me, had it been in any other place in India, it wouldn't have been the same. There would have been like 5 people in the front row. So hats off to all of you. To the bird watchers and bird conservation. I started my career as a birder, turned an ornithologist, and became a birder again. I'm not doing much of bird ecology now. So in the whole world, every 2 years, something comes out. It's called the Living Planet Report, LPR. This is data from 2024. And this year data will come out sometime in October. Research is being done by 27 institutions, including ZSL, WWF, PNC, WCS, quite a few field-based organizations and institutions, which found that among wildlife populations that have been monitored, there are a lot of wildlife populations, scientists from ZSI and others will tell you that quite a lot of populations are not monitored regularly. But if you look at populations which are monitored regularly, almost 75% decline has happened in 50 years. We might see extinction very fast. So what are we doing about it? We studied ecology, we love birds, we love to take pictures, go out and see a nice Pentax binocular, then buy a Sony or a Nikon or a Canon, great. But what is our role as a citizen to conserve some of these birds, and what is possible? That's the index. If we look at birds, the overall decline has been almost 50%, almost. And if we look at the migratory birds, the decline is half of that, which is about 24%. Why? I'll come in details in a while. The words in red, if those are readable, are the challenges. Habitat loss, and habitat loss is happening in front of us without us noticing it. Last year, Dr. Asad Rahmani was giving his keynote speech and he said, these days if we see a black-winged kite or a black-shouldered kite, we get very happy. So, oh, we saw a black-shouldered kite, we saw 2 of them. And Sujan sitting here, he would remember when we used to take the train from Bojboj to Sialda, in one ride we would have seen probably over 10, or to Bolpur we would have seen anything between 15 or 20 such. But what's happening? Is there habitat loss? Perhaps there is not just habitat loss, but large-scale habitat disturbance, which is there in the second one, unchecked pesticide runoff. So these are the challenges. You open any newspaper, you will see one of it getting manifested every year. Are we thinking about it? I was talking to friends, seniors out there, I think Siranjanda was just saying that that magpie robbing creates a ruckus every morning. Okay, you are lucky that you have that magpie robbing. Some of us are not. It's just not there. Okay. So what are the alarms? Is there an alarm like our phone which would wake us up at 6 o'clock in the morning or 5:30 in the morning? There are alarms. What are these? These declines, these indices, these are alarms. And then the other challenge is about open natural ecosystems. Unfortunately, in most of the land use plans, if there are land use planners, I don't mean any offense to any of you, we work with land use planners. Open natural ecosystems or systems, ones like grasslands, wetlands, are often regarded as wastelands. Why? Can we not change that narrative? Be a force multiplier. Some more examples here. there has been 50% decline of birds that use open natural ecosystems like grasslands. I'll come to that. And wastelands, that's a word that should be wiped out from dictionary. You drive out of this very nice convention center, talk to a land promoter and ask him or her, what is wasteland? Land is not waste. You can't waste any land. Mark Twain wrote many years back that buy land, they're not manufacturing it anymore. 30 years back, some of our gurus had said, try and buy land like Narendrapur Wildlife Sanctuary and protect, because those will be the last islands of biodiversity in a city. Okay, the other challenge that is happening is this very heavy use of pesticides, agrochemicals, that is creating a challenge in the entire food chain. On one side, monocultures are creating challenges in the forests. You still have eucalyptus, I won't name the state, but in the name of plantation, a few years back, the distribution of species were there, and almost 80% of those were exotic species. Then we had to intervene, request them that these are exotic. Oh, I'm sorry, these were available in the nursery. No, don't do that. Use indigenous species. Use mango. Even that's fine for your particular region. So monoculture, and even if it is indigenous species, is going to create a problem. The threat of homogenization is a challenge. Grassland recovery or grassland restoration in our country should be done at large scale. We are a country where we have about 500 million livestock that depend on grasslands, much of them. But when we talk about grassland restoration, or we talk about grassland recovery, even today grassland management in many large protected areas, and some of those were mentioned here since morning, it's slash and burn. Don't do that, please. NCBS, Dr. Mahesh Shankaran and his students, and we worked together in Dudhua, and we started different plots. That okay, one will be traditional system of slash and burn, and in other areas we let the grass to stay. In some areas we cut it and then see. Biologists and plant taxonomists found an orchid which was not recorded from India for 50 years, and this happened in 2022. So we need to change from what we are doing now, what we are practicing now. And this is something that is happening in every ecosystem, in every place on Earth. And these are data from, mostly from SOIB and similar kind of data sets. Grassland specialists, massive decline in grassland specialists. And not just in diversity, but in density also. And that's where is the problem. Is that, okay, if there is less diversity in 1 year, you can say that maybe this particular species has not come, or maybe it's like a contra to that spoon-billed sandpiper who did not want to leave the coasts of Bengal. But the density is going down, their abundance is going down. That's a challenge, because grasslands are going down. Of course, some grasslands will give way to a shrubland and different stages in succession, but floodplain grasslands are going down. They are getting reclaimed, they are getting encroached upon, and that needs to be changed. Forest canopy specialists, even they are not spared. There is a massive decline happening. But again, major challenge that is happening is these Eurasian migratory shorebirds. And then there is a positive growth, that's why that's in green, which is pigeons. And today we don't have time to talk about disease, the kind of diseases that some of these birds might bring in. So as birders, as ornithologists, we now need to, and I'm sure all of you are doing it at some level or the other, we need to be outreach people for conservation and for ecology and for health of ecosystems. And lastly, macroplastics. That's another challenge, which is we are not even noticing it. We were doing a program on One Health, on ecosystem health, in a village in Uttarakhand. In a remote village, we were training, getting ourselves trained also in a way, talking about livestock diseases and looking at herbivore diseases and disease transmission, disease like anthrax or FMD getting transmitted between these two groups of herbivores. And there was a very senior lady. She said, "Do you drink milk?" I said, "Yeah, we do sometimes." "Now, where do you get milk from? Mother Dairy or Amul? They come in packets." She said, "Yes." "How do you drink it?" "You cut the corner, right? You throw the big packet in a bin. Where does the tiny corner go?" That is an arithmetic calculation. You all use pens, and mostly ball pens or gel pens. A pen refill is about a gram. And how many crore people are using pens today as we are talking? Just multiply that. If there are 10 crore people at any given point of time using 10 crore refills, how many kilograms or tons of plastic will that create? I'm not saying stop writing, but I'm saying, are there sustainable ways to change this whole macroplastics pollution? And there is something which is, we are talking about not doing much, which is this whole climate change. Migration shifts are happening. We are seeing aberrations in migration, but then something that we are not noticing, and perhaps I was talking to, I'm not sure whether it was Dr. Devti or Sandeep or Sujan, is that why did, or maybe someone in Delhi, why did that spoonbill sandpiper stay back in the coast of Bengal? Or are there some shifts happening? So one could be change in availability of food, and which is this food web peaks. So there might be peaks happening with changing climate and with very erratic changes that we are seeing in the weather pattern. Calcutta, which used to be very humid and warm, I came from Delhi. I'm originally from Calcutta, live in Delhi these days. It's much more comfortable. Delhi, the humidity is almost similar, but the temperature is 39 degrees. You can't bear it. You just stand outside in the evening and you will start sweating in 10 minutes. In Calcutta, it's much better, believe me. So where do we stand as a country? I think we've done far better. You know, all of us probably can give a pat on our back and say that, well, we must have done, and I would rather say our forefathers must have done something good, that in less than 2.5%, and Lester, I don't mean any offense to any other country, we have been able to hold 12% of world's birds in terms of species, not in terms of numbers, but in terms of species, we have about 12%. And that's something which is phenomenal. Does that create an opportunity, or is it only about enjoying? Yes, we don't need to enjoy, but for our future generations, it creates an opportunity. It makes us more responsible, or we should have more responsibility or get more responsibility to do something about it. And this is the background. Coexistence. This gentleman was not tilling this particular land. He actually put a fencing. This is from Uttar Pradesh, from very close to Delhi, very close to actually where the Jewar airport is. And he put a fence around this Saras crane because this pair, they will raise a chick. They will probably build a nest. So he left that land fallow. So somebody asked that he will be losing crop there. He said, doesn't matter, I have enough, doesn't matter. You know, they will. So this is coexistence. You know? Hats up to that farmer. And that's something which is probably allowing our country to have so many birds, right? Can we nurture it? Can we do something more for this? What are the approaches that we have? Most of the scientists and conservationists who spoke before, including managers, like Sonali said, that we need two things. Conservation that has to be based on science, whether it's bioacoustics. You know, Robin Bijayan and Manjari Jain did a fantastic workshop on Monday at INSA in Delhi, launching that bioacoustics convention, India BCI. Whether it is science-based or evidence-based, they have to be there. It's not based on assumption. Conservation has to be based on science. I wish there were more conservation managers here from the forest department. Chief Wildlife Warden was here, but there should have been more young IFS officers, state forest officers here to see and learn and appreciate what they are protecting. Second, partnerships. We have a fantastic partnership with Bird Conservation in India. and of course eBird and Marlene and so on and so forth. That needs to strengthen, and I'm sure you are using eBird, you are uploading data, because data is the future, right? So some of these are going to really be of great help. Policy support, we do have an enabling policy. I have a couple of slides, and then local actions. Narendrapur Sanctuary or Chintamani Kar Sanctuary, I have not visited that for decades now, is there today because some of our seniors, many years back, or rather many decades back, some of you were probably not born, we were not toddlers, but we were quite young in schools and maybe early years of colleges. Because of their action, because of their activism, today we have Narendrapur Wildlife Sanctuary. East Calcutta wetlands perhaps needs more such push from local people. We need these wetlands. These are heat sinks. Why Calcutta is far better than Delhi? We are drying up our wetlands in Delhi. Somebody visited, Dr. Bhaduri visited Okla Bird Sanctuary and was saying that it's almost like a desert now. Yes, because we don't have heat sinks. We are drying up the heat sinks. In one of the areas there is next to a wetland, they constructed not in Okla but somewhere else closer to Delhi. There was an apartment complex which was named Lakeview. The lake was gone. Lake only appears during monsoon. There is no lake because another building has come up, right? It was considered as a wasteland. India can do better. Earlier this year, I was giving a speech in the Columbia Bird Fair, and I presented 2025 figure because that was during GBBC 2026. And when I showed this, there were actually people from the US says, no, it can't be. India can't be on number 2. It should be Canada. I said, why? Why do you think a country in the south can't be on number 2? And then he said, wow, yeah, okay. Yeah, you have so many birds. He said, yes, but we also have 1.4 billion people. Now just think, how many birders are there? I'm sure all your friends must be thinking that you all are crazy, like my friends think that I'm crazy on a Saturday afternoon. I'm here talking about birds. But it's also my profession. But for you, for whom it's not a profession but a passion, again, hats off to you, thanks to you. It's because of you, India is in number 2. We, at one point of time, we have to get India at number 1. And at that point of time, only birds will feel safer in our country. The more people start appreciating birds and bird habitats, only that's when things will change. Otherwise, things will not change and we will be thought as crazy. I'm very hopeful to see all the young people, including school children, that you are our future. We could not do much, but we'll try and stand by you, shoulder to shoulder, and fight it out. We have to go to number 1. So now what are the opportunities? You all know about this paper. I think it was a PDF was circulated on the BWS website that if you keep on doing more bird watching, it helps it helps people de-stress. I'm not sure if you have fights at home with your spouses and parents and children, whether you are doing birding, whether you de-stress you or give you more stress. At least to me, I'm lucky I don't get stressed while I'm going on birding. But it does change. And there are studies done by NIH which have shown that bird watching, even to a later age, actually helps people neurologically. It helps you think. It helps you think continuously. Are there any challenges? Yes, there are some challenges. Concentrated bird watching. In the morning you heard about this whole saga of grey hornbill and the oriental pied hornbill feeding. At one point of time somebody named it churel and there was a fight on the WhatsApp group. Then they said, no, it's not churel, it's mossy ma. So some of us, we had to put, hey, you are actually looking at birds that are nesting. It's like 20 people standing outside a hospital nursery where your child is born. So be careful. No, we are seeing far away. Now far away is what? It's like 20 feet. No, we are using a long telly. It's fine. You use a 20,000 millimeter telly, that's fine. But please ensure they are nesting birds. They are chicks, right? Please protect them. Have that privacy. Give them some privacy first. Science is important, but not with many people. So at times we have to remind people. WWF had to put 2 of our young volunteers, 2 girls. They come there at 5 o'clock in the morning. They are there till about 7 o'clock, trying to tell people don't go near. It's feeding time, so you stay away and let the parents come and feed the chicks. And second, sometimes we try to go little near. We need the background blur. We need the pig to be in focus. I need 20,000 likes, and I'll tell you the reason. Some of us 30 years back, when we used to take slide pictures and pictures on transparencies and wait for that last Saturday in Prakriti Shamshat to show 3 of our slides processed. I mean, those were probably 3 slides out of 30 odd. Those are in focus. We used to wait when a Kushal Mukherjee or a Sridhar Chatterjee bhalo hoyeche or something. We used to wait for that. We used to wait for little pat on the back. Instant gratification was not there. Today, you take a picture, put it on your phone, upload it on Instagram, and you get 100 likes. Wow, instant gratification. What is that bird getting in return? Have you thought about it? Srijan will tell you about someone who actually destroyed a nest after taking a video, saying that no one else will do it. Where, how, he will probably not tell you. So we need to be responsible birders and responsible photographers. Use Photoshop to do background blur, but don't go very near. And then there are social and governance challenges. Benefit sharing, it needs to be equal. Unequal benefit sharing will work only for a certain amount of time, but not for the long term. And that's where the challenge lies. If we are telling the farmers that let the Sarus crane breed in your farm field and you leave it fallow, it's sometimes we have experience in the Tarai. Somebody said worked in the Tarai. We work in UP Tarai, Uttarakhand Tarai. It's fraught with conflict, elephants, tigers. And it's very hard to go and then tell people that let the tigers live there. It's fine. To somebody who has lost his son or a daughter in a tiger attack. It's very tough. Staying in Delhi, it's very tough to do that. So there has to be equal benefits. We need to find ways. There are ways of doing it. Local infrastructure, sometimes we strain. I know about birding lodges, sometimes they said, oh, अच्छा सर आपने वो गेस्ट भेजा था वो उसको तो कमरा नहीं दे पाऊंगा 6 कमरा तो बुक हो गया. And then this guest calls up, he said, यार सर वो चिड़िया चला जाएगा पायलट क्लास एक बार जाने दो. भैया इस साल क्यों देखना है? You go next year. I mean, don't put pressure on that poor homestay guy. He's under tremendous stress. So it sometimes strains local infrastructure. We might say that okay, he will get more money, but he probably doesn't have so much of water to offer to the tourists. That's a challenge. And then again, economic impacts, ecological impacts. We still don't have. Nobody does EIA on tourism yet. So these are some of the summaries. I'll not get into much of the challenges, but rather talk about opportunities. I don't want to hold you here for the rest of the evening. But I would rather talk about the actionable mitigation. One is zoning. And this is something Dr. Sandeep Tambe and some of us, we started in Sikkim many years back. Atharva is here, our colleague from Sikkim. We started zonations and zoning, that there should be a tourism zone, but there should be something which is a no-go zone. The boss, don't go there. You are going to get into the privacy. You are going to affect the privacy of these birds or mammals. So wetlands, there should be zonation. There should be zonation for where tourism can happen, where camps can be set up. So those zonations were done in Sikkim many years back. I hope that they are working, and we perhaps need to do zonation in most of the areas where birding is done. Then of course we talked about machine learning and verification through eBird and different other apps. That definitely needs to be there. And then again, it's quite debatable, this whole no call playing. Now, okay, call playing for research is okay, but call playing for calling out a bird for photography, how important is that? Is there a guideline? No, there is no guideline. Shall we do it? Shall we not do it? I'll have to take that discussion offline because there are two schools of thoughts, and I can go to any side and have a very good argument on that. But it's for debate. But if it is used, if it is done responsibly, there's no doubt about it. That even then it will have some impact on the bird. My parents are not there, but if tomorrow somebody calls out my nickname, by my nickname, I'll get disturbed. Every half an hour if somebody calls me out by nickname or somebody imitates Sujan's voice and calls me, so his number, I'll get irritated at some point of time, right? So let's put ourselves in the shoes of those birds and see that how many tiny players that we are trying to use all the time. We need to be a little more responsible on that. Now, what does our country say? Do we have an enabling policy? Yes, we have good policy. We have enabling policy. How are we implementing those? perhaps a lot more needs to be done. We have good number of protected areas, about 5% of geographic area. There is a target to increase it to 7.5% or even more. More than 70 protected areas are dedicated for birds, which is not there in many other countries. But India also has a lot of responsibility. It is a vital winter land. In the morning, Sonali, I think, was showing those maps, the Central Asian Flyway and East Australasian Flyways. So it is, our country is a vital wintering ground. What's happening? The core habitats are to be focused. Of course, others are doing it. But as a signatory of CMS, we need to be more responsible about protecting our wintering grounds, the wetlands, the migratory birds, what we call stopover sites. I'm sure some of you have driven from here to Delhi or driven from here to towards Odisha, towards Mongajori. Driving towards Odisha, if there was no dhaba on the road, would you have gone to Odisha? Yes? Okay, great. But the birds, unfortunately, they have to pack food in their car because they're not. I mean, they can have a little bit of fat tissues accumulated, but they won't. If I am asked to go to Dehradun and take the new highway, I won't because there is no dhaba there. I would rather take the old highway where there is a dhaba and I can stop for some aloo parathas. Same thing with the birds, they need stopover sites. If there are no stopover sites in between, they will start avoiding. And this is something that we are seeing with mammals also. The more disturbance it is caused, they start avoiding. It's not about mitigation, but when the mitigation is coming. If mitigation is not coming in our lifetime, we are doomed. We need to start looking at these tiny sites. Even a site like a Satragachi has immense importance for some birds as stopover sites. Do we know that all the migratory birds which come there are the same for that whatever 45 days or 60 days window? We still don't know. Maybe some, but maybe not. Maybe one flock goes and other flock comes. So these science need to tell us, more research needs to happen to figure out what's happening. Critical Ramsar sites and then the whole intersectoral planning or what we say cross-sectoral collaboration, something that is very much needed. And why, in very recent times, I would say that things are also changing. The narrative is also changing in the government. The Honorable Central Minister of Ministry of Environment and Forest, at some point of time, whenever we talked about long-term mitigation, the discussion used to hover around where is the money, who is going to fund. But for a couple of years, I would say that the narrative has changed that, okay, if this is a permanent solution, it's government. It's not like one ministry. Government should find the money. And ultimately, that's where sustainability lies. Business, industries, which our CEO was saying in the morning, but large-scale development projects which are funded by the government, they have to look at safeguards, and they've actually started looking at it, and we have some examples, but a lot more need to be done. So what are the options? One is conservation reserves. End of the day, I'll not get into the legal part. I mean, offline we can have some discussions. But if there is a small piece of government-owned land, even if it's revenue land or something, land ownership won't change, but a conservation reserve can be notified. That will at least conserve that area for posterity. So promote it wherever it is possible. Whether Satragachi can be a conservation reserve or some ash pond next to some power plant can be a conservation reserve. I think let's see whether that's possible or not. Because if those conservation reserves are created, they will be conserved and protected for future for birds, and not just for native species but also for migratory species. And there are examples from Tamil Nadu where we had the country's first conservation reserve. And then community reserves, fantastic ideas. We have something similar that we started many years back with few other NGOs in Arunachal. There is a CCA consortium which is community conserved areas. We started way back in 2006, 20 years back. I'm sorry. So CCAs are working very well. Completely community owned land, community managed, and it was quite interesting. The Monpas and Sedupens, Sujan and I, we did some surveys there, I think was it 99 or so. They would, at times, the Monpas would say, hey, we are Buddhists, we won't allow you hunting. And the Sedupens would say, okay, but on certain days, maybe a little bit of hunting might be done. So there were very interesting discussions happening, subsistence hunting and stuff. But then what happened, they said, all the groups came together and they said if it is a CCA, there's a ban on hunting. And believe you me, if there is community ban on hunting, it's ban on hunting. Nobody in the community can go and do the hunting there. Same story from Apatani villages in Arunachal Pradesh. And the custom, the tribal system is very strong. So similar to CCAs, community reserves which will give legal protection, they are also quite important. And many states have now started promoting community reserves. People still fear is that whether the land will go to the government or whether government will have more control and they won't be able to use it for their own bona fide purposes. Those can be legal discussions can be had. Those safeguards can be put together before land is a particular place is notified as a community reserve. But that's again a way forward, a brilliant way forward that our country can take forward. And then Ramsar site. Now Ramsar is also looking at it and looking at all the pressures. Even smaller areas with smaller congregation can also be Ramsar site. That's something also important. So I would strongly request and recommend and urge, and WWF would also be of, we will also provide whatever support is needed. If BWS could, in the next couple of years, look for notifying or at least get the agreement or buy-in from the government to have one new Ramsar site, one new community reserve or conservation reserve, that would be really fantastic. It will go a long way for our future generation. Coming to the end of our presentation, of my presentation rather, but a couple of colleagues have worked in this particular work. I'm going to talk about a linear infrastructure and mortality of birds. You must have read about great Indian busters. They're dying while hitting those power lines and sometimes even the windmills in Desert National Park or close to Desert National Park in Jaisalmer near the Indo-Pak border. Wind turbines are a challenge, solar monoculture fencings are a challenge. So what we did, I'll try and show you a solution. We identified in Dehradun, and I'm sure most of you have visited Dehradun, actually very close to Wildlife Institute while one goes towards Paonta Sahib. There is this place called Langha Road, and Langha Road had a fairly large carcass dump, and it used to get carcasses. We used to see carcasses of Egyptian vultures. Initially, people said that Egyptian vultures must have eaten some chemicals, some pesticides, and that's why they are dead. And then postmortems were done in IVRI, and most of those were electrocution deaths. And then we started figuring out that they were getting electrocuted. So we reached out to scientists. Munir Virani also helped us to figure out that the entire line, the power line need not be insulated, but where they are perching, where those birds are perching those posts, they could be insulated. So that's a cross-sectoral collaboration that worked very well in Uttarakhand. The power department started talking to the forest department and to the municipality. In fact, the district magistrate and the municipal commissioner got very interested and said that these vultures should not die because they are the scavengers. They are the kind of the health workers of our ecosystem, and that really worked. It's the power department who allocated funds and posts for quite a distance, less than 10 kilometers, have been insulated. The posts have been insulated, so the perches are all insulated, and that has not only helped in protecting these Egyptian vultures, but also black kites and few other raptors which visit some of these carcass dumps. So about 5 kilometers has been done, and there is proposal to do 8 kilometers more. I'll come to something very touchy. Bird trade. India used to be a source country. It still is a source country for a lot of wildlife trade. A lot of native birds are traded. But there is something interesting happening. India is also becoming a consumer country. We are trying to put up some data on our website. There is a report on exotic pet trade that we did with earlier Traffic's office. But look at these. These are native bird seizers, and look at the states which are coming in. West Bengal is there prominently. Border states, West Bengal, Uttar Pradesh, but also Odisha. So it also perhaps shows some kind of pattern. So I know that Hill works very actively against poaching and against bird trade. So if there are organizations, if individually also, if you provide information to stop this kind of trade to either Hill or WWF also has a wildlife trade control program, or the best is Wildlife Crime Control Bureau. Send an email to them with information. Your identity is protected by the government, and something ideally needs to happen to stop this trade. But something interesting that happens here. And one thing that caught my eye, my colleagues in the trade team, they were working on it. Kingfishers were getting seized. And I was like, what? Kingfishers? And they said, no, sir. Kingfishers came, but kingfisher beaks. Beaks of the state bird, white-throated kingfisher, are getting seized. Not in massive numbers, but they are. It's something like elephant blood beads. You can Google what is an elephant blood bead. Suddenly in Northeast India, we started seeing female elephants were getting killed. So they're not for tusks, they are for blood beads. So you can Google later on. But you need to have a very strong heart to see some of those gory pictures of dead elephants skinned kind of thing. So bird trade is happening. Will it decimate the population of white-throated kingfisher? We don't know yet. But something has to change, something has to stop, and why that trade is happening, we need to figure out and stop it at some level. Opportunity for bird tourism, aviatourism, lot of opportunities. It can multiply the economic conditions if it is done responsibly, ethically. It also empowers the landowners. I personally have seen in different parts of the world, not just world, but also different parts of the country, how things have changed. 30 years back when I was working on tragopans for my PhD in Northeast India, we did some coastal surveys, we went to universities, started asking professors, students about tragopans. Not many people knew about it. Birders knew about tragopans. Sightings were very less. Today you ask people, birders about Hemming's tragopan sighting, I'm sure if not 100% guarantee, local guides will show you a Hemming's tragopan with probably more than 50% of guarantee. Saty tragopan probably 110% guarantee in some places. Are they feeding, baiting? No, I have not seen them feeding or baiting. But it's because local people have started appreciating, they have started getting together, and then they have seen some kind of economic benefit for themselves and their community. So that needs to work well. And it also has low environmental footprint. I must say that in most of the areas, what I have seen that birders are generally not very demanding. They're not asking for a television room. The only thing is a power point, a plug point, so the cameras can be charged. But nobody is asking for a television, nobody is asking for a lot of food and stuff. And people are generally happy and then talking about birds, what should be the sighting the next day, and whether eBird is working. Sometimes say, oh no, all those data have not been submitted on eBird. Can I have a Wi-Fi hotspot in a very remote part of Uttarakhand and stuff. So it's changing. It probably has less footprint, and we need to see how we can keep it like that. Regional bird tourism revenue share. Asia Pacific has a lot of share, and India can actually make bird tourism something really big, more responsible, and something that empowers the local people, something that kind of takes up the local economy. And there are a lot of ways to do that. Again, something to think about if NGOs could come together and do something. Tremendous potential for the country. Looking at bird tourism and how ecosystem services are helped from there, looking at, if you look at something which is there in the middle, it certainly gives almost close to 5 times more spending margin, which means that yield is very high and somebody is getting that benefit. If money is spent by X, then Y, who is getting the money, somebody should be getting that bit of benefit. So social benefit is also pretty high. Habitat impact ideally should be low. This is based on global studies. So let's keep it that way. That let's start and rather not start, but let's stick to responsible birding. And then finally, I think my previous speaker also talked about citizen science and people-powered conservation. So databases are very important. Cornell Labs, the director of their whole bioacoustics lab, and that's possibly the only large bioacoustics lab. Holger was there at our office, and he was saying that we need to have the global database. Currently, the global database is at a very nascent level, and the database needs to really go very high to have better science and better evidence for conservationists. Flyway Atlas, something that the government has been working on. There are NGOs who are working on this. And then celebration of the Big Bird Day or Migratory Bird Day, that kind of also tells people, gets people together. A lot of records from India. sync with migratory. But there is something at the last that we use a lot, is that look at habitats and look at threats, different kinds of threats. When you are making a list, a checklist on eBird, and if there is a project, great. But otherwise, eBird also has an option to record threats. So if there is a way to record threats in certain areas, and sometimes if people are not recording threats, if there is a sharp decline, and that's what we are trying to do through SOIB also, is that if a sharp decline is happening for a particular species, is it because of habitat or is it because of some other reasons? Is it because of pollution? Something that we need to look at, like the vulture crisis, which actually took a lot of time to understand why vulture crisis was happening. So there is a good rise of citizen science data that is happening, and it should actually go up. If India has to go on the top position of the great backyard bird count, we need to promote citizen science. More people, especially in the rural areas, need to be empowered with phones and with the app where they can go out in the open and then participate in this bird count. Maybe that's a motivation for them to work on it. And what can bird watchers do? I've given some actions, but perhaps not just bird watchers, but something that BWS, WWF, some of us can do together. One is mapping out the grasslands, the remaining grasslands, and generally grasslands, when it is looked at as a grassland, open land, power line creation are generally done. And you will not even get to know when it comes to the State Wildlife Board or National Wildlife Board for a clearance that a power line will be there, because it doesn't need a lot of land. But if a power line is actually put across grasslands, it might create a lot of damage for grassland birds. So can we at least start mapping? I'm sure BWS, and I was talking to Major Paria the other day, you are mapping Bengal Bird Atlas, maybe something more we could do together, map the grasslands and see how we can at least inform the decision makers that these are grasslands, avoid these areas at least. A second one, the whole health monitoring, I don't have to say anything more about this in Bengal. Bengal does fairly well in eBird and a few other bird estimation. Perhaps need to have more people from the rural areas. Looking for nest site failures. It's very important to monitor nests, but not by crowding. But if an individual is monitoring 2 nests, fine. But are you monitoring it over longer term? Ecologists in this room would be familiar with long-term ecological monitoring or long-term ecological observatories. I see Dr. Bhattacharya is nodding. We don't have the concept in India. Identify a government site, identify nothing but the National Library. It's not going away. It can be a great example on ecological observatory. Just 5 people going there every week, every month, have a study design and start monitoring 10 years. The kind of phenological data, the kind of insect data, the kind of bird data that will give us will tell us a lot about the urban ecosystem that is there. And then again, little bit more about bird kills. I see that BWS, there are a lot of discussions of late going about on bird kills and animal kills, road kills. And then something to do with India actually could do a lot better in the Asia Pacific region. Though Asia Pacific is quite high on bird tourism revenue generation, India is not very high yet, but it can still do better in terms of not just tourism services, bird tourism services, but also people working as bird guides, but more responsibly and doing something where the benefits are shared equitably. That's about it. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much.
I have some experiences to share that I feed the backyard birds every morning around my home, and several birds not only they come to feed, they come around my home, and I have recorded means almost 30 different species of birds just somewhere around my home. They not only feed, they also move around my home. So one day I was reading, and there one person was commenting about the habitat of people feeding crows in Hakuya Lake. And the people who come for morning walks, they feed the crows, and the person was telling that due to the people feeding crows, many migratory birds or many smaller birds get injured due to the attack caused by the crows. So I had a question to that particular person, that that person is speaking very negatively about the crows, but did you ever think that in case of the vultures were scavengers, very efficient scavengers, and they were not heard of posing any threat to smaller birds. Black vultures were known to do so, but no Indian vulture species were heard of doing so. So we did not conserve vultures, but now that person is speaking of the crows attacking the birds. So I had the question that when about speaking negative, some ordinary people, most people are extremely engaged, but some ordinary people are still, when they are speaking negative, they forget that did we do any positive activity? And
Thank you. Good observation. What's your name, young man?
I am Mural of Garden High School and class 7 and I studied class 7.
Brilliant, Anurag. I couldn't know what you were doing at your age, and I would really urge you that keep a notebook. Note your observations. Those 30 birds, when you will be doing your graduation, and when you look back, what changed, or when you were in your 12th standard in 5 years, you will be able to see some change, and perhaps ecologists would be able to see something, would be able to interpret those data. What you are doing, brilliant. I guess there are many more people doing this. Great job. I guess we are done. Yeah?
Stand here, please.
And yes, I think that
Okay.
is on
Yes,
there.
yeah, please. I'm game. If you have questions, I'm game.
Sir, my question is about night safaris or nocturnal bird walks, basically for mammals, owls, everything. Creatures of the national parks, wetlands, maybe, where there's bird diversity. Because there's an element of poaching and lots of things happening at night. It's just no one's sleeping. What is your outlook on that?
Thank you. That's a great question. And I'll try to give two answers. One is personally, as somebody who studied ecology. If human beings are not supposed to walk next to a national park at night, there will be consequences, which we might not know with our torchlights, and so there will be some consequences. However responsible we are, there will be some consequences to the ecosystem. It has to happen, right? We need to make ourselves more responsible, not to shine torchlights at an owl which is looking at it and blinding that owl and stuff. That's one. But if I say legally, I would say that in some areas where night safaris are done, I have not done in the recent past, only when I was a researcher, we used to do transects, not at night, but very early morning, 3 o'clock transects for tragopans. I hope that they are done with adequate legal safeguards and ecological safeguards. That's what is important. We need to have safeguards. Because more than, so one thing we also need to appreciate that there might be somebody who wants to see those owls and we might not see them in the morning. So if there are people who want to go and then see those owls without causing much disturbance, then we need to have adequate safeguards to do that. We all love roads. In India,
Roads are big thing. You know, we are constructing huge kilometers of roads, and Dr. Prachin Mehta here will be able to tell you what's happening with the roads in Maharashtra, the whole NH7 and stuff. We all like good roads, you know. But then if that road cuts through an animal corridor, if it starts killing a lot of birds, then that's a problem. Where are the safeguards? And it is our job, it's not the job of an engineer to know the safeguards. It's the job of the ecologists to tell them what are those safeguards.